Welcome into Raider Recon. I'm Clint Scott. He's Rob Bro.
I am sitting next to Clint Scott. Do you really want me to read this, John?
No.
Today we discuss Shiel Wood. You go to Arby's. We should end that.
I didn't think you would actually do it.
Texas Tech added veteran defensive coordinator Shiel Wood in the offseason after letting go of Tim DeRuyter. Wood was hired from Houston, where he followed Cougars head coach Willie Fritz from Tulane. His first coordinator gig was in 2021, where he was the co-DC at Army. In 2022, he accepted the defensive coordinator job at Troy. That season, the Trojans' defense ranked 8th nationally in points allowed. In 2023, he took the same role at Tulane, where his efforts ended with a Broyles Award nomination. He helped guide a Green Wave squad that went 11-3 and boasted the second best defense in the American Athletic Conference. Last season with Houston, he once again showed his ability to quickly improve a unit. A dreadful defense the season before turned into a solid unit under Wood's watch, dropping from 31.5 points per game to 22.9. That was the 4th best mark in the Big 12. This year, Wood will take over a Red Raider unit that had plenty of their own deficiencies last season. They were the second worst defense in points and yards per game in the conference. However, with a returning core of inside linebackers who both earned honors in their careers, plus the addition of instant impact transfers like David Bailey, Cole Wisniewski, Lee Hunter, and more, the Red Raider defense could be a top unit in 2025.
Welcome back, and yes, that is Shiel Wood. Shiel Wood, Clint, we were asked today on the end of the bench, 9 to noon, 100.7 Score, weekdays, why didn't we go after big-name coordinators? And in some respects, I kind of agree that Shiel Wood is not a big name. But both of these guys, I feel like we've talked about Mac Leftwich being an up-and-comer. Mm-hmm. And I think at a much different point in his career, Shiel Wood is also looked at as kind of an up-and-comer. He's not old by any means.
42.
But he's not 33 or
right.
29 like some of these young coordinators around the country. But co-OC or co-DC, DC, DC, DC at 3 different spots, mixed in with a lot of other stuff. He starts as an offensive assistant, is like watching the corners and is like, man, I really like doing the wide receivers, but I'm more interested in how they're covering my wide receivers.
It's like, who else better to coach the defensive backs than the ones they're covering that I'm coaching?
Then he gets into the defensive game, gets out of coaching, gets back into coaching, rises up the ranks quickly after getting back into coaching. And so you kind of see Shiel Wood as a big-name potential guy. And I think getting him from Houston was a big thing. So I think Shiel Wood is a great hire. I've got some stats to back up some specific thoughts I had on last year's defense. But what do you think, just based on last year's defense, why you fired DeRuyter and went with Shiel Wood in particular?
First off, I hate the why didn't we go after a big name concept? Like, well, sorry that we couldn't go get Jim Knowles. Like, sorry.
Penn State was outbidding. Yeah.
When you're on your list of big names, who were you thinking was going to be available and that you were going to be able to go get? It's like why don't we just go get a whole bunch of 5-star offensive linemen without looking at, there's not really that many.
Right.
And, there might be 1 or 2, like that sort of concept. But when I think of everything that Shiel Wood appears to be good at, like when you look at the improvement that you saw at Troy, at Tulane, and especially last year at Houston, it was all the things that Tech's defense struggled with. I mean, when you're talking about Houston not giving up big plays, having a secondary be in the right spot, giving that very, very bad Houston offense consistently a chance to stay in games, was everything you were asking for from your defense last year. And if you're looking at it, we're going to get into this in a little bit, but for your defense last year, it wasn't all bad. It was just mostly bad and in the worst moments when you just did not need him. Yeah. And then, I mean, the passing defense clearly was awful. But it's not like you didn't have moments where they didn't step up and play well, like against Arizona State or Iowa State. But for the most, or like you didn't have highlight players, obviously, like Jacob Rodriguez or C.J. Baskerville, who I thought was really good last year. But all of those things that Shiel Wood has been good at in his career, specifically from the co-DC at Army and on, where he's taken over the DC role himself, is perfect for what you're trying to turn around from last year. And I also like that he's had years that head coaches just couldn't deny bumping him up another level. And I think that now the quick rise is promising to where he's got some respect. I mean, if you're going, this is the other thing, like, oh, we wanted a guy with a big name. How about a guy who was nominated for a coordinator of the year? That's what I don't do. Your homework is what I would say.
Yeah, I've never heard of him. He's not a big name.
Exactly.
Well, pay attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gary Patterson was out there.
Tech's defense was really good against the run. Well, pretty good against the run last year, I thought.
Yeah.
The front seven was decent. I threw a lot of injuries on the defensive line. You did not get enough pressure, and your secondary was subpar.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst in the country, just volume-wise.
Yeah.
Now, you covered or defended the run 918 times last year. There were 918 plays you played defense. Houston played defense 749 plays last year. So that's a bit of a gap. But to me, the biggest issue with last year's defense is the chunk play.
Yeah.
I look at North Texas' big play, like their only big play was a big chunk play. You bottled up Cam Scadaboo until you didn't on a swing pass for 70 yards. Washington State had several big plays that kind of killed you, were the difference in the game, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
TCU chunk plays were the difference in that game for sure.
Especially, again, in the biggest moments.
Arkansas murdered you in the first quarter, and then you just kind of couldn't recover because of big plays. So I went and found Texas Tech 2024. You were 131st in the country, giving up 214 plays of 10 yards or more. That is 23% of your snaps were 10 yards or longer defended. You gave up 72 plays of 20 yards or more. That's 125th in the country. That's 8% of your snaps going for 20 yards or longer. 37 plays of 30 yards or longer. That's 127th. There's 133 teams that play college football at this level. You gave up 12 plays over 50, 10 over 60, 2 longer than 80, and 1 longer than 90. Well, Clint.
That's not good.
You might ask.
I would
How
ask.
did Houston do
Yeah, I would ask that.
last year? They gave up 134 big plays of 10 yards or more. Second in the country. Fewest. 18% versus 23. 20 plays, 20 yards or more, 5% of their plays, good for fifth in the country. At 37, the percentage not fifth in the country, the 37 plays. 30 plus, 46 in the country. They gave up 7 longer than 50 as opposed to 12. They gave up 3 over 60 as opposed to 10. And they did not give up a play longer than 79 yards.
You know what else is interesting with that?
Yeah.
With Houston, they didn't do that with just a whole bunch of these all-world guys.
They defended about 160 less snaps.
Yeah.
So the percentages don't seem as extreme, but second in the country, fifth in the country, 46th in the country is pretty stark compared to being bottom 5.
Yeah.
Let's go to Tulane in
Let's
2023.
The Green Wave.
180. This is even plays that you played defensively as Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 918 versus 918. Tulane gave up 187 plays of 10 yards or more compared to Texas Tech's 214. They gave up 51 plays of 20 yards or more compared to 72. That's 45th in the country compared to 125th. And 30 yards or more, they gave up 22, which was 35th in the country, compared to 37 for Texas Tech. Well, let's go to Troy.
You didn't give me a chance to ask what about Troy. What about Troy?
Troy? What did you do, Troy? 48th in the country, 10 plays or more. 5th in the country, 20 yards or more. 10th in the country. You had 30 yards or more, because that's really what you're talking about, the big chunk plays.
Right.
You can survive being 100 in the country, 10 yards or more, if you're not giving up the huge plays.
And that can be skewed. Who knows if it's on a 3rd and 15. That could be a good play on a 10-yard gain.
So at Troy in 2022, his defenses, 1.7% of their plays went for 30 yards or more. That's 17 out of 976. Tulane, 2.3%. Houston, 2.9%. The biggest number is 4% of Texas Tech's plays, which if you defended 100 plays, that's 4 plays went for 30 yards or longer.
Again, this goes back to just what you had just asked.
37 plays of 30 yards or longer.
Why I think he's a good, much like I think Leftwich is a good fit for the offense, specifically the things you were trying to not replicate from last year are exactly what Shiel Wood has been really good at with his defenses.
I watched 3 Shiel Wood Houston games this week in preparation. Over and over on 3rd downs, I saw patient defense, and if it's 3rd and 6, there's about 10 guys within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage defending the sticks. If it's 3rd and 15, there was 8 guys 15 yards off the ball defending the sticks. Now, you saw a lot of 3rd and 15, 0 pressure from Tim DeRuyter. And if that doesn't get home, and you're in man coverage and somebody blows an assignment, which you did often, that's a home run.
Right.
Instead of a 12-yard gain, as you said. So, 3rd down defense, big plays. I think Shiel Wood is drastically better. And it just seems like they're more disciplined.
And what's going to be, and by the way, again, that's where I think it's like night and day where you can do that with Houston in a year. Houston, in the Big 12, and even before the Big 12, they weren't just known for their defensive units, right? And you come into the Big 12 thinking like, boy, their first couple of runs, they're going to be a cellar dweller. And they start out that way. And then it's not like you're looking around the defense going, okay, we can rely on higher echelon talent. I mean, for a unit that ranks 4th last year in the Big 12 statistically, which, again, was just a massive, like a 10-point per game difference. And then you look at that and go, okay, well, tell me how many first-teamer, second-teamer guys did they have? They had 2 guys get honors. They had 1 first-teamer at the defensive back spot. They had another on the defensive line. And you go, okay, well, they must just have all of these honorable mentions, right? Like, that's what they're going to get 20 honorable mentions. They had 1. They're the only one in the conference with 1, and it was their linebacker who was really good last year. But you look around and it's kind of like this like no-name defense kind of feel where you don't have just these superstars. And for Shiel Wood, something that I think has been underrated is he clearly knows his talent level. And I think he knows how to use that and put them in the best spots for success, which makes me really excited for the unit you have this year. And, does the approach change at all from what we've seen when you have these? You would think when you have the pass rushers that you've added, it would, lean itself even more to that, right? Because you don't have to send all of these bodies and you'd go, hey, Height, Bailey, Hunter, go be destructive. You guys just be in the right spot here at the next level. And this is more of the defensive personnel, maybe less Shiel Wood. But if I'm Jacob Rodriguez and especially Ben Roberts, who didn't have help either, by the way, the secondary and the defensive line, pass coverage and pass rush, not cohesive. Neither one helped out the other. But the linebackers didn't have any help either.
Yeah.
And Jacob Rodriguez had a great year. Ben Roberts had a solid year. I think a lot of people were like, well, he took a step back. I was like, well, he wasn't playing behind defensive lineman that had been here for 5 years.
Right.
He was playing behind a defensive line that obviously really struggled, had some injuries there too, but just, didn't control the line of scrimmage. Having all of that difference, and now, okay, for Shiel Wood and what he's done and how he approaches the game, you would think, what perfect marriage.
Yeah. Synergy, I think they call it.
Yes, synergy.
It's a circle. But you do look at the points per games as well.
That, with like 2 arrows.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
The points per game as well, as you're talking about, the improvement from Houston. In 23, they gave up 31 points per game. In 24, 22.9. Tulane, the season before he got there, 22.3. When he was there, 20.5, so 2 points better, but and that's kind of
You're still a top 20. You're still
Yeah.
a top 20 defense with Tulane.
There's not a drastic availability to be improved, right?
Right.
Willie Fritz was already there for a long time. You're kind of coming into a warm blanket.
And does enough where Fritz goes, I'm not leaving you when I go to Houston.
and then
You're here with
yes.
me 1 year. You're going to be with me.
And then the year following, 20.6. So Tulane did that without Shiel Wood, just as a note.
Sure.
Year before with Troy, 26.1. When he gets there, 17.1. And then when he leaves, 17.1. So maybe he left a blueprint. And they did what Shiel Wood was doing to continue. So the Tulane thing with the long-standing head coach and the defense was already good coming in. To continue that, and then the other 2 stops to have 10-point changes, I think that also speaks to what he did. But I also would caution everyone, because you could have written the same things with DeRuyter. DeRuyter was a doctor. And at A&M, he took a big step in his first year in it. At Oregon, he kind of continued the success that Oregon was having. And any of his other stops, Cal was night and day from before and after. So you kind of thought of him as a doctor of defense as well. But I do think that things that have plagued Texas Tech beyond just this year, right? Maybe since 2012, giving up big plays. And that seems to be Shiel Wood's specialty, keeping the ball in front of you. And because of that, if you're asking me, and I can see it in your eyes, who's the better hire, Shiel Wood or Mac Leftwich, I think I would say Shiel Wood.
It's funny, we agree with this, and this totally wasn't written in the notes, and this was totally, yeah, you're right, just a question we both...
Well, your answer isn't here, so
it's true.
I did not know that.
To be fair, I think in the end this will obviously be a time will tell situation, although hopefully it's so good it'll just be impossible to choose. But I'm with you for the reasons that you just said, right? And again, I go back to synergy, perfect marriage, being exactly what I think you need to be defensively in the Big 12 on the back end. But then I also go, and this isn't a knock by any means, but if you said with, both coordinators that you hired this year, if they're successful, not even just like wildly successful, but both successful, who do you think would be here longer? This is weird because Wood has been a 1-year stop guy, but it's because he keeps rising through the levels, if you will.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, and I'm not saying at Tech you're you're at the Ohio State level or anything like that. You're not in that elite group, right? But you're running out of, as far as college football goes, unless it's head coaching, you're running out of ceiling there. Where I think Leftwich has a lot of similarities to what Kitley did, where it feels like percentage-wise, when you're looking at coordinators that get hired as head coaches, vastly outweighs towards offense, right? Everybody wants the young offensive mind, and that's the way Kitley was. And 3 years later, 3 good years, Florida Atlantic. It feels like Mac Leftwich is that way. And again, I think that's a good thing. You want guys like that. Yeah,
if Mac Leftwich is incredible for 2 seasons and Eric Morris gets a call up to the ACC or somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's getting a shot.
Is that going to be – I mean, I don't think that's crazy at all. In
Right.
fact, I kind of think that's, if I had to guess what will happen,
Well, that's the
that
dream,
would be
right?
my prediction. Yeah.
The dream is that every young offensive coordinator you hire is so good that he comes for 3 seasons and is then as a head coach somewhere. Like you just want to be pumping those out.
And again, who knows? Wood could be up for head coaching job, or maybe wants to go be a head coach. But it just seems like the percentages are going to be towards that offensive coordinator position, and so this is just like a side point, because the more important point is the, what are you bringing to the table as an instant impact coordinator? What can you do with this unit, this talent? What can you do in the next couple of years with some of the younger guys, and who else you may get in the portal? But I also think that, in that perfect world, if you're having all of the success and Coach McGuire's here for, another decade, and you said which one is most likely to be here and be that guy, like at Iowa State, where the defensive coordinator, or Utah, and the defensive coordinator is just there under him for 8-9 years, or the whole decade next, I probably lean towards, I would lean towards Shiel Wood.
Well, I think the standard of excellence at Texas Tech is just so different. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot less to be impressed defensively. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're just above average, we'll build a statue, hopefully, of Shiel Wood in 3 years.
Would it be a wooden statue?
Sure, yeah.
So more like
maybe
a carving?
Nice oak.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like maybe a chainsaw bear, but Shiel Wood.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a vacation home in New Mexico, but it's Shiel Wood instead of a bear.
Yeah.
And we'll still do him in this pose.
Sure. And then Leftwich, I think if he's average, you're on him. Mm-hmm. Like, we need to be great offensively. So I think, like, if it's a jury and you're trying to prove, the burden of proof, the burden of excellence is much higher offensively.
Although,
but I do think
I might disagree with that this season, though. I think in years past, yes, but what you're expecting this year, and I mean, if you're being honest, what you paid for this year, I think there is that expectation to be great.
Okay, if Shiel Wood's defense is averaged 27 points a game given up, would Tech fans be happy?
Depends on what the higher end of those games are. Like, if you lose a game, let's say you lose the game at Kansas State and you have an offense or a defensive meltdown, you're going to remember that more than you will the average. You're going to, show me what the lows of that season defensively are instead of the average. Because then absolutely it'll be hammered. Like, if you're sitting outside of the Big 12 championship and you can look back at, a meltdown defensively against Kansas State, or, you go get beat on the road by Arizona State and the offense puts up a whole bunch of points on you, but then you look, it's like, yeah, but you kept BYU down without Retzlaff. Yeah, but you went in Utah. It was a low-scoring game, and that's helping your average.
Yeah, but I think if you lose to Kansas State 35-31, you're telling me the Texas Tech fan base that we both know and have known for years is going to say defense really needs to tighten up?
What if you give up 40 points, but the week before, when it's not Kansas State, you have a 20-point outing?
I lived through a lot of seasons where Tech fans were mad that you were losing 55-60 because you didn't score 63.
I'm not saying they won't be mad at the offense. I just think this year it should be different. The expectation should be different.
Certainly, but I think if I set the number at 27.5 and took the under, I think that's nearly a touchdown. Well, that's a touchdown improvement.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying, show me.
I also don't think you're going to have I don't think you're going to have a non-con 50-point outburst to ruin your averages.
You better not.
Yeah.
I think both would get pounded on, and I do think you would see that with the offense, because that's just what's built into our brains. But I also think that this is. I think everyone has noted when you say the superstars on this team, who are the first names that come out of your mouth? It's going to be David Bailey first.
Sure,
you're going to have Jacob Rodriguez.
Right.
We're mentioning Cole Wisniewski a lot in that, and it's more than like your weapons. Baron Morton's obviously going to be in that because he's the quarterback.
Yeah.
But when you're listening at like the percentages of names, it's all defensive now.
Yeah, well, you changed the goalpost a little bit on my original question when I said if you were average, and then you're like, well, what if you blow up a game? It's like, well, yeah, this average is not blowing up any games.
But
If you're consistently giving up 26 points a game,
okay, so if every game you give up
Yeah.
26 points a game,
yeah.
yes, you will be happy. But you're not.
Well, but it'd be like
and
2
your
zeros
average-
to start, and then there's a couple of Big 12 games with 35 and a couple with 21.
or higher. I
That's
mean,
what I'm saying.
again, show me what your worst 2 games are and how it affects the season.
But I guarantee you, if you're getting blown out and they're scoring 42, but you score 17, it's the offense's fault in Lubbock.
I think both will get stones thrown at.
Certainly, if you're 9-3, everybody's getting stones because
Especially
you're not one of the Big 12. But
if it's like Baylor last year, where it's like here's a 30 spot basically to start the game, if you have something like that,
yeah,
you're saying no one's going to be mad at the defense.
not no one.
You're saying
Not no one. I'm saying the consensus would be that it is more difficult for an offensive coordinator to succeed in Lubbock because you have to be great. I think you have to be average in
Okay,
Lubbock. And I think
I agree with that, but it's not that you don't have that expectation defensively too. I think Shiel Wood, just like
I don't
Joe
think you have
McGuire
an
with his
expectation to be
defense,
great with defense.
I think you do this year.
In the building? Yeah, absolutely.
No, I think
Between you and I? Yeah, absolutely.
I think with
in
the
fan
fans-
base, yes. But what is great in Lubbock defensively? I don't think it's great in Tuscaloosa.
That's a good question.
That's what I'm saying. So
But I don't think the number you just threw out, if it's
27?
I don't think
That's the best since 2009.
I don't think that's going to be considered great because we build things up so high. We're going to be like, if we're rising expectations as fans, it's got to be you. You're telling me Iowa State and
Okay.
Utah's they've averaged 20.5 points per game and you couldn't do that?
Can I say something to the fans? Fans of Texas Tech. I know we love offense. And I know we desperately want to win a Big 12 championship. And if we do this season, thank the football gods, right?
Yes.
But if Texas Tech is giving up 25 points a game in conference and you're outscoring people still, or if your offense has some snafus and you lose 2 conference games, I think we need to equally weight the damage and not just say that Mac Leftwich sucks. That's all I'm saying.
Second. We can agree on that.
I think we're talking in circles a bunch here.
I'm just going back to and this is something for expectations. If you're going into what the best Big 12 defenses have been in conference play, it's been low 20s. It's been BYU. It's what Arizona State did
conference
last
only
year.
stats or
conference
total?
only?
Okay.
That's conference only. Here conference only stats. Here are your top 5.
This is last year?
Last year, Utah, 23.9 points per game. That was the 5th one. 22.9 for Iowa State, 4th best. Colorado, 22.3. Arizona State, 22.2. BYU, 22.1.
So my
That's
under 27 was average. It'd be about in the middle of the
yeah,
conference.
but we were talking about great.
You were talking about great.
And I think that's what I'm saying. I think there's the pressure to be great. So I think I think that number would get not scoffed at. That's too strong. But I think that
I think people would be ecstatic to have 27 points a game defensively in Lubbock, Texas. I would be happy with that.
I don't think with this unit that they should be.
And again, that's 2 different conversations we're having.
And I also don't think that they will be. I don't think they'll be angry at it, but, but if you're saying happy with it,
I think success matters in that. No one's gonna be pissing and moaning if you win the Big 12.
if you give up 35 points a game, but you're scoring 60 a game or something stupid like that, and you win a Big 12 championship, winning cures all ills.
Yes.
But if you're looking at just the numbers, I wasn't expecting to have this conversation today. Hey, let's go get wins.
Yeah, just
win all your games, and then it won't matter.
Win.
So, let's talk about the defensive unit, shall we?
As a brief preview, because we're about to do it for the next 3 weeks.
And so this is obviously who he's going to be working with, who he's going to be coaching. You're talking about those stars. Just a quick preview to you. If you went, who are the stars? who aren't we talking about enough? Maybe you could do a middle one of like who could be stars.
Yeah.
If you went like 3 tiers there, who would you put where?
I'll give you a star from each level, and who we should talk more about in each level. I think Lee Hunter is my star at the defensive line. Obviously, you go the name you'll probably say, but I'll go Lee Hunter. Jacob Rodriguez, obviously the star at linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say Bryce Pollock is the star in the secondary. Guys you're not talking about enough. I think I might actually skip Skylar Howard here and go Anthony Holmes Jr. To be 3 deep, I think it's pretty special. And
Yeah.
I even think Duda Banks and Jaden Cofield are guys, like you're really deep defensive line. I am very excited about the defensive line, interior. And then, second level that probably aren't talking about enough, anyone else?
I know.
Like Ben Robertson, John Curry are also really good. And then secondary, you're not talking about enough. I'd go kind of another inside linebacker, but Mike Dingle as kind of a off the radar star guy, new position.
I see what you did there.
In these games,
Off the radar star guy.
right? Well, yeah, star is sure.
Let's see what you did. That's well
So
done.
you go.
You just do that, and then you go like this. And then
Yeah.
that's how you draw a star.
Sure. I watched a couple of Houston games this week. And in one game, the star was basically you're playing a 4-3 over, where the star's the outside linebacker on the edge. And then you're playing against TCU, a true 4-2-5. And he's back off and playing safety. So I think there is some flexibility there, but I think he can have a big year. I think in some games against Utah and Kansas State, he'll be up bumping uglies with the tight ends and whoever else up at the line of scrimmage defending the run. And then if he can defend the pass, or maybe A.J. McCarty plays against the pass-heavy teams.
So I think I would go. I did a little bit of the same thing you did when I was going through that list. When I got to who aren't we talking about enough, I was getting to all the names I expected to see. I'm getting to like, give me Duda Banks, Bryce
Right.
Ramirez,
Yeah, everyone
Daryl
else.
Tillman,
Everyone
Charles
else,
Esters
yeah,
the third,
yeah.
Jaden Caulfield. If I went stars, yes, I would go David Bailey, but I'm going 2 on the front because I agree with Lee, like David Bailey, Lee Hunter, Jacob Rodriguez, and I know that's leaving out the secondary, but I go them clear stars. I go could be stars, Romello Height, Cole Wisniewski, and Bryce Pollock. And so then if I went not talking about enough and I just kept with my 3 names here, you skip Skylar Gill-Howard. I like the Holmes pick. I mean, we were all excited whenever you just kept on ramping up in commitments, much like you did offensively, where it's like Holmes is going to be, oh, man, that's perfect. He's coming with Wood. He knows the system. He's got a high ceiling. He all of these positives that are still there, by the way, but then suddenly becomes a depth piece. And part of the other reason why I think we're all excited about the defense. But I will go Skylar Gill-Howard as not talking about enough. I agree with Dingle and then Ben Roberts. Yeah, I just think the inside linebackers, we know so much about them. And I think there is expectation, and people are looking forward to seeing John Curry, especially local kid. I think adds with that, but also the talent is there. I think Gill-Howard and Dingle and John Curry are those names. I think you could also go, again, this is getting into you could say this, and this, and this. We just stopped talking about Ben Roberts.
Yeah.
And
when he struggled, he was asked to do things he was not good at last year. He really struggled.
And this is where I think, again,
Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford were big losses that we knew they were going to be big losses, but I think they were compounded with injury and otherwise.
But we just thought about their losses as just affecting the interior defensive line.
Yeah.
We didn't think about it affecting the rest of the defense.
Oh.
And so for Roberts,
I'm just kidding.
we're doing this again.
I thought it would affect the linebackers, but not to the extent. It was a large extent further than I thought. Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so no, you're good. I think Ben Roberts. This is another plus when you're going, what Wood is good at.
Yeah.
The this is where I circled back to the inside linebackers, and whether I'm John Curry, Ben Roberts, Bryce Ramirez, or even Jacob Rodriguez, who was outstanding last year, I go, thank goodness.
Yeah, we're not hanging.
It should make their lives easier.
We're not hanging Ben Roberts out on Savion Williams on 3rd and 3 for a 70-yard touchdown.
Yeah. And that's
whatever it was.
And that's where you get into part of yes, you have big plays where you were just out of position and just had breakdowns, and then you had other ones because you have guys doing things that they shouldn't have to do because deficiencies elsewhere on the team.
And it happens in this Wood defense a little bit where Romello Height and David Bailey will be breaking off in zone coverage, which I don't love.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be multiple, and you got to do some things, and you can't just blitz every time, or they're going to expect it.
So, where do you think that this unit will rank at the end of the season, and where should they be expected to rank in the Big 12?
Look,
I like. This is the question that got you to rub your eyes.
You're going conference only?
Yeah, let's go conference only.
Here's my issue.
Okay.
What is West Virginia offensively? What is Utah offensively?
Sure.
What is BYU sans Jake Retzlaff offensively? What Jalen Daniels are you going to see in Lubbock? Potentially, you should be, shutting some teams out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you can control Devin Dampier enough to not have him go crazy. The flip side, what is your offense doing? Are you going to run 1,000 plays on offense again? Or are you going to play a little ball control and run 800 plays?
Which is something interesting with Wood's career.
So, now he has had years where he defended 20 points a game, and he's playing 900 plays of defense.
Right.
So it's happened before, but I expect them to be top 5. I expect them to be top 5 at the end of the year. And I'm going to answer like this. I think in the building they're striving to be top 2 and maybe not 2. But I think Arizona State has a lot of new returners, and they're going to be good again. Utah has a lot of returners defensively. They're going to be good again defensively. I think Kansas State generally has a good defense. And I think Houston, I don't know what they're going to be defensively. How much of it was predicated on Shiel Wood? We've seen Shiel Wood leave places, and those teams continue to have success because of, either what he instilled or Willie Fritz instilled. So I think you're striving for 25 or so or less a game. And I think that puts you in a really good position. Now, if we go in Clint world and you say, well, one of them's a shutout and one of them's a 50-point loss, then, yeah, I think it gets a little squirrely. But I think if you're consistently average or above average, I think you're going to be just fine. And I also expect the offense to score more than 28 a game. So I think you're in a good position here with 25 a game, and I think that will be the best defense since 2009, 10?
Mm-hmm.
In Lubbock. Well, the 23 defense, I think, gave up 26.5, but I think you scored 27, which is why you were 6-6.
By the way, Clint Math was just doing real math of how numbers could work out and just giving out real possibilities. Rob Math. No, I'm just kidding. I think if I just laid down because I think you're right with variables and stuff like that, but at the same time, even let's say you see offensively the best version of Jalen Daniels and West Virginia and Jaheim White and whoever they end up having at quarterback by the time you see them at the end, and they're the surprise of the Big 12. Rich Rod is back. And Oklahoma State turned it around. Hingie is just on fire. Who saw that coming? Say you saw the best version of all the offenses. This defense is built to still hold good numbers, right? That's why you have the players that you have. So And I don't think that'll happen. I mean, I think you're going to have some surprises somewhere on the schedule as far as this team was better than we thought, this team was worse. It's just going to happen. That's what the Big 12 is. But I think that when it's all said and done, you will be a top 3 defense. And I think it'll be you, and I think it'll be Iowa State. And then I think there's an open spot there between.
Said Iowa State.
Well, I think Iowa State, if you're going just points or whatever, well, they're consistently there, right? I think they were, what were they, 5th? Or what? They weren't the top 3 defense, but they still had a really good year. But they brought back a bunch. And I think when you're looking at like the preseason stuff, you're going to see some, and you already have for not the Big 12's official one, but just, so-and-so, Athlon, on 3, whatever. You're seeing a lot of Iowa State guys on there because they're going to be what Iowa State is, and it's a really good defensive unit. I think you'll be 2 of the 3, and then it's going to be someone else between Arizona State, Utah is going to be in that mix, Kansas State. We'll see about BYU and Baylor. I think that they will be maybe more in the contention of like top 5 and not top 3. But I just think, and if I had to guess, I'd probably take Arizona State. Just a smidge over Utah. Just because of, again, the returning production and that defense. As good as they were offensively and Scattaboo, they won a lot of games defensively last year for Arizona State. And I think that's Dillingham is trying to make that an identity as well. So I would probably take those as my guess. And then I think, you have some wild cards. So you mentioned Houston. I think that there's some really high-end talent defensively with Cincinnati, but there's clear holes in that roster. I think there's some high-end talent at TCU on the defensive side, holes on the roster. I think there's high-end talent on Kansas's defense, clear holes on that roster. But that's just me going down of like, I think those will be the 8 or so teams in the mix for top half defenses. But I'm rambling into just circling back and doubling down that you'll be a top 3 defense this year.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is this roster defensively? If I rated the 2023 defensive roster on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think you would rate it as? 26 points a game. But let me give you some numbers just to refresh. That's freshman All-American Ben Roberts, 107 tackles.
Uh-huh.
That's Baskerville, Rabbit, Josiah Pierre played a lot, Jalen Hutchings, Tony Bradford, Braylon Lux, Tyler Owens, who's still on an NFL roster, Malik Dunlap, Jacob Rodriguez down the stretch really improved your defense when he got out there. I mean, just frontline starters, because I think you struggled with depth that year, but just frontline starters. Like, that's a better roster than I remembered.
If you go rating the front line with that group and you're just rating the front line, it's 7.5, 8 out of 10. But you have to do the depth issue, and that's where, to me, it's like...
Well, just the front line. Just front line.
Just
these starters versus those starters. Because I think it's a chasm on the depth. I think you have a lot more depth this year.
Right. Yeah, if you're going front line...
I think defensive tackles would be a wash.
I think I'd go 7.5 with that unit.
And then this is an 8.5, 9? Like, it's not it's not an 11.
No. Well, no.
I think your edges are much better this year, front line.
The reason I think you give a points edge is you legitimately have a shot to have a couple guys in All-American contention.
Yeah, at a position of importance and edge.
Yes.
I think defensive tackles are a wash because I really respected those two. I really like Jalen Hutchins.
Nobody respects them more than us.
Nobody respects them more than
No,
us.
but I agree.
I think the linebackers, I think Jacob Rodriguez being healthy makes this roster better. He wasn't healthy that year.
He plays in four games.
Toward the end, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think your corners are comparable. I think Malik Dunlap was really good. And then you're way better at safety with Rabbit back there. Rabbit over Brendan Jordan.
Yeah. You know something we haven't mentioned?
And then I guess Baskerville and Owens, we'll see if Wisniewski is better than those guys.
And I think this is kind of the wild card of it, where you brought in your known quantities of guys that have produced at a high level, but then you also have, just like when we talked about the offensive line, you have a Cole Wisniewski who was great at North Dakota State. And by the way, not just like this small FCS kid coming in, like big body, 6'4" frame. Coming back from injury too, by the way, and also jumping from the FCS, highest end of FCS, to power football. But I think there's the wild card factor with him, and he could be. I mean, we could go like, man, he's one of the best in his position across the conference. And when you're doing this comparison, like with the 2023 squad, you go, oh man, yeah, he absolutely is, a pushing factor of why this unit was better than that one. But the biggest thing though with it is, when you are just doing the front end talent, you're not talking about the depth, which is a huge, or it should be, huge push for this unit. Where you're going,
I think
that's why this defense
certainly deeper at linebacker, certainly
better
deeper at
than
corner. I'm not sold on the safeties being better than those safeties, even with the depth. And then
Chapman Lewis, this is a name we didn't mention because he's going to be out and probably going to do he has the red shirt year available and will come back for the last 4 regular season games or something like that.
I think Rabbit played all the snaps, so depth doesn't matter. Just in that one spot.
Sure.
Defensive line, I think, tenfold better. Edge, tenfold better, probably depth-wise. Linebacker, they're 2 years older and healthy. So I think, certainly on that respect as well. But I think you're much deeper at corner, too.
What would you rate them?
That defense versus this defense?
Yeah, the front end that I did.
I'd probably go 7.5, but I don't know if I would take like 8.5 with this one. I think you still have, like, again, I don't know that the safeties, and we'll have to see if Wisniewski can jump a level and be healthy. And I think Romello Height is a big name and a coveted prospect, but he doesn't have the production of a frontline guy. Now, if everyone else is taking blocks and he's one-on-one every play,
right? When he's
see what happens. And if you're chipping toward David Bailey every time, Romello Height could lead you in sacks.
Right. I think this is what's you go and look in your defensive front. I think you're bringing in 17 sacks from last year of your new guys. That's including Hunter, Holmes, and Gil Howard. Yeah. All at different levels, by the way. All at different levels. But when you put all these guys together, that's where you go, okay, well, all of those guys were the double team guy last year.
Yeah.
Who is that this year? And that's why when you do the addition of everybody and the total picture, that's where I think you start skyrocketing expectation on the defensive front.
Texas Tech, this is the final point I'm going to make here. Texas Tech in 2023, 27.6 points per game, conference only. That would be my floor for this unit.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But me personally, I would not have a pitchfork out if this defense gave up 27 points per game.
I wouldn't have a pitchfork
I didn't
out.
say you would. I said I wouldn't.
Okay. I also wouldn't have a pitchfork out. Okay. You're salty today.
I'm not salty.
You're salty today.
No, I'm not.
What did you and Collier do on
What do you mean I'm salty?
What do you mean? Had too much coffee today.
Conversating.
Conversating.
You were the one that was trying to be energetic before the show. I was just trying to be energetic with you.
Yeah, I was trying to be. Do you want to, before we get to the fan... Before we get to the fan question of the week, and we do appreciate these, I wrote this down. We've had like a little quiz, something every single week, and I totally missed this window, so I'm forcing it in here. I want to make Josh edit this. Where, Josh, you ready for this? We're going to go real big when I say fun fact. We're going to zoom in and go like, fun fact. Ready? Fun fact. Fun fact. You know where Willie Fritz was born and where he played college athletics?
Was he born in Lawrence, Kansas? Did he play at the University of Kansas?
No, he was born in that state, though.
Was he born in Topeka?
No.
Was he born in
You could just say Kansas.
Manhattan?
You can keep guessing.
Mullinville? Kansas. Born in Kansas.
Shawnee Mission.
Well, not a
Yeah, I know. That's why I was...
And it's a Kansas university, but not the University of Kansas?
Uh-huh.
And not Kansas State?
No.
Wichita State. The Shockers.
the Gorillas of Pittsburgh State.
Well, now I got that either.
Also was the point guard there.
Fun.
Fun. I meant to do that when we were talking about
Sure.
Willie Fritz.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Okay, you ready for the fan question of the week?
Yes.
Do you feel better that you know that?
100%.
You're going to use that in conversation?
At some point next year, when we play Houston, I will probably bring that up like I thought of it and forget that you told me.
Yeah, see? Perfect. That's why I do these things and we do that on air. As always, my Twitter, Rob's Twitter, Double T973's Twitter. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and you want to comment underneath, you can also leave a question there. We take a fan question every single week and we answer it. And we try to pick some ones that we get or have gotten where it pertains, obviously, to the episode we're talking about. And I think this one counts. Maybe you could do this one whenever we start talking defensive front. But a question that has been asked, how many sacks should we expect this season? Which is an interesting question.
At least 22.
You know, when you're typical...
Big 12 Colorado led the Big 12 with 39. The previous year
Yeah.
was 33. That was the leader. I think even before... now, I'm looking up right here. You can see. I think Texas Tech had 44 in 2022. Is that true? Let's see.
I was
See
looking
how
at these
far off I
earlier.
am. See how far off I am. Way off.
Yeah, I knew you led, but it wasn't like 30...
31.
Oh, 31. I was thinking 33.
I think you baseline should have at least 25. And that's like frustratingly low.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, 35?
I like that you started with 25, and I'll tell you why. In your typical year, like you said, in the Big 12,
Yeah.
for the most part, it's like 2, maybe 3 teams are somewhere in the 30s, and then you get into your mix of a bunch of high 20s, and then the teams are going like, ugh. Typically, you're going, to those that are in the low 20s and high teens. However, again, this is where I go, show me what it looks like.
Houston?
Because Houston did not have a lot of sacks, had a good defense.
20.
Iowa State,
They
over
never
the
do
last
that.
couple of years, really have made a living off of having one of the best defenses and sometimes having like teen number of sacks, which is just crazy because we just don't think about that. Now, the guys that you brought in, you're expecting to cause pressure, even if you're not blitzing or sitting in the house or whatever. So I do think, I bring all of that up to say that I think your baseline around 25 is good. If I took a stab at what you'll end up with, I'll go somewhere between 30 and 35, and I wouldn't complain with it. But again, if you had 28, let's say you ended up with 28 sacks, in all year long, I mean, you were wreaking havoc. You were controlling the line of scrimmage. Most importantly, you were holding the opponent down to a low total. And you still had all these pressures and things like that, and they just didn't have all the time in the world to pass.
But what if
I
you
wouldn't be upset.
But what if you had one game with 10, and the rest of the season you only had 16?
That was a legitimate question. I asked a legitimate question.
I know. That was a legitimate question.
We need to end this episode. I do think, though, like if you do have big numbers,
Yeah.
are you going to be shocked when, a third of them, or if a third of them came in between Kent State, Pine Bluff, and
No, not at all.
Oregon State? So
And I do think you can be successful without sacks. It's not like...
yeah, again, that's why I brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we've got that question a lot because of specifically who you brought in, right?
Sure.
And I get it.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. Hey man, this was fun. It was. We're excited to start breaking down the defensive units. We'll go defensive front next week. Any final thoughts on Shiel Wood?
Yeah, if this defense doesn't make your fire go, your wood's wet. If this defense doesn't spark your fire, If you're, see you next week.
I'm going to put all of that on a t-shirt.